Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something that probably affects you, me, and pretty much everyone else, yet it happens entirely behind the scenes. We're looking at how data scientists are essentially rewriting the rules of finance to build modern, highly predictive credit scoring models, all by using alternative data. Let's just jump right in. 45 million. Let that sink in for a second. That's the number of adults in the United States alone who lack a sufficient credit history for conventional scoring. Because they don't have enough of the traditional data, things like past loans or standard credit cards, they're virtually invisible to the traditional financial system. And that brings us to a massive systemic issue: the thin file borrower. Imagine the absolute frustration of paying your utility and phone bills on time every single month for years, but you still get denied a simple car loan because the bank system literally can't see you. So how exactly do we score the unscorable? Making the invisible consumer bankable is really the core challenge of modern underwriting. The solution? We have to build an entirely new kind of engine, one that runs on data that traditional banks used to just ignore entirely. Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The alternative data advantage. 2. Advanced feature engineering. 3. Selecting machine learning algorithms. 4. Explaining the black box. And 5. Fairness and regulatory compliance. Step 1. The alternative data advantage. Traditionally, banks relied almost exclusively on past loan performance and credit inquiries. That was it. But now, there's a vast new sea of alternative data out there. We're talking about bank cash flows, utility payments, rent, and even telco signals. Think about emerging markets where traditional signals are really sparse. Regular payment of a postpaid mobile bill or consistent utility payments can act as a highly statistically meaningful proxy for someone's stability and income regularity. And if you break it down, this vast sea of alternative data generally splits into two main branches. First, you have transactional cash flow data, so things like bank activity profiles and supply chain payments. But then we also have non-transactional data. This is your behavioral traits, the actual quality of a customer's transactions, or external reports. To get a truly comprehensive view of creditworthiness, we really need both. Step 2. Advanced feature engineering. Here's the thing, though. Millions of raw alternative data points, like, say, a bunch of text-heavy bank transaction descriptions, they're completely useless on their own. They might generate some low-level features, but with no proven link to credit risk. So the engineering process here is absolutely crucial. It's kind of like refining crude oil into high-performance fuel. Step 1 is raw, unstructured data collection. Step 2 is data categorization, to fix any data quality issues. And Step 3 is feature extraction, where we identify nuanced patterns, like regular versus irregular income, tracking liquidity events, and basically turning messy human behavioral habits into clean mathematical signals. So you're probably wondering, does all this heavy lifting actually work? Well, the key metric here is AUC-ROC, which basically measures the model's ability to distinguish between a good and a bad borrower. And the results are wild. By injecting these engineered behavioral features, thin-file borrowers get a massive predictive boost of 0.0472. That is more than double the improvement we see in thick-file borrowers. By using alternative data responsibly, we're narrowing the performance gap by over 38%. It statistically proves that these new features literally expand credit access. Step 3, selecting machine learning algorithms. Now, to process all this high-dimensional alternative data, traditional statistics, well, they just don't cut it anymore. A traditional logistic regression model hits an AUC performance of about 0.78. But when we apply an advanced ensemble machine learning model like XGBoost, performance just leaps to 0.89. It's a real game changer. The machine learning model is able to automatically detect intricate, nonlinear relationships and super high-order interactions in the data that a basic linear regression simply cannot see. And hey, this isn't just some academic theory. The Hong Kong Monetary Authority actually confirms that boosting algorithms like XGBoost have consistently shown greater predictive power. They work by sequentially constructing decision trees that specifically focus on correcting the errors of the previous iterations. It's incredibly powerful stuff. But this immense power introduces our next massive challenge. Step 4. Explaining the black box. As our models get smarter and way more complex, they essentially become impenetrable black boxes to human understanding. But think about it. If a computer denies you a loan, regulators and frankly you deserve to know exactly why. We can't just throw up our hands and say, well, the algorithm said no. This is exactly where explainable AI, or XAI, comes into play. Frameworks like Shape and Lime act as our safety gauges. They're post hoc techniques that actually allow data scientists to peer inside these complex algorithms and calculate the exact impact of every single feature on a specific prediction. Let's look at how this works in practice. When researchers applied SHAP to an XGBoost credit model, they were able to pinpoint the specific features driving the algorithm's decisions. Interestingly enough, the top predictor of default was loan amount, carrying about 12% of the individual importance. That was followed by checking account status and borrower age. Together, just those three factors account for roughly 35% of the model's discriminative power. This is huge because it proves that even deep inside a complex black box, the machine is still relying on economically meaningful relationships, not just random artifacts in the data. Step 5. Fairness and regulatory compliance. Now we really have to hit the brakes because the regulatory risks here are severe. Research from Vanderbilt Law points out that alternative data can actually amplify discrimination. Because these algorithms are so incredibly complex and often protected as trade secrets, there's a very real risk that seemingly harmless alternative data points might act as illegal proxies for protected classes, like race or gender. The industry has to be incredibly careful that we aren't just taking historical biases and automating them under the guise of advanced math. Regulators in the United States rely on frameworks like the Equal Credit Opportunity Act and the Fair Credit Reporting Act to protect consumers. A core requirement of these laws is what's called the adverse action notice. Basically, if a lender denies you credit, they legally must disclose exactly how they define creditworthiness so the consumer understands what impacted their score. You can see why having explainable AI from our previous step is absolutely legally necessary to generate these transparent notices. But how do we actually go in and actively remove bias? Just blinding the model to race or gender, an approach known as fairness through unawareness, is actually fundamentally flawed. Instead, modern researchers advocate for active debiasing strategies. We can use causal inference models to understand the real-world relationships behind the data. By purposefully including alternative data, we can pick up additional signals that allow economically disadvantaged groups to prove their creditworthiness. And, crucially, every single feature must be validated for its strict business necessity. We've covered a lot today. We've seen how alternative data can take millions of invisible consumers and finally give them a statistical voice. We've seen how machine learning, like XGBoost, can predict risk with unprecedented accuracy, and how SHAP can explain those complex decisions. But as we navigate this very tightrope of regulatory compliance and potential algorithmic bias, we are left with a really vital question to ponder. Are we truly building a fairer financial system, or are we just building a more complex one? It's a very delicate balance between high-tech inclusion and regulatory risk, and frankly, how we answer it is going to define the future of modern finance. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.